Hey everyone, welcome back to A Hub for Counselors. I'm so excited about today's conversation. I'm here with Kimberly Owen. Kimberly is a licensed psychotherapist. She's also an enrolled citizen of the Lumbee tribe and a good friend of mine for many years. Kimberly has over 20 years of experience in psychotherapy and is based here in Cornelius, North Carolina. So we live right by each other. Kimberly also owns Sage Healing and Wellness, and she's doing something really unique that I can't wait to dive into. Kimberly's actually been developing something called the medicine wheel method, which has some roots in some of the life model principles, and we're going to talk about the intersection there. Specifically, Kimberly and I have been in a life model identity group together for 10 years, a long time. So we learned about it all at the same time. So from what I understand about the medicine wheel method, this framework has not only transformed how Kimberly is working with clients, but it's also helped her develop her own voice and space for the work. So Kimberly, welcome. I'm so thankful that we're here together.
Oh, thank you, Monica, for inviting me.
Yes, it's going to be a fun conversation. So, first question I have for you, Kimberly, is from your perspective as an indigenous woman who's also a psychotherapist, what was missing in your traditional training and your application of your training in the psychotherapy room? You know, I know for years and years you weren't bringing in the wisdom of your heritage. So, what do you think was missing that you're now applying?
Yeah. So, yeah, there wasn't a lot of indigenous people really in the psychotherapy arena when I was doing my training. So, I was looking for someone just to give me that lens. I knew it as an indigenous person, but it would have been nice to have a professor to really kind of talk more about some of those ancient healing ways that indigenous people were practicing thousands of years ago. And so, it's just very holistic approach to healing, like, using the earth, the elements that come from the earth was, returning back to the earth, and, really learning some grounding techniques that I think were just missing.
Yes. Yes. And so
So,
you've really
yeah.
grown in your even understanding of your own heritage as well as how it applies to some of the things that are kind of like, oh, this new grounding technique we're learning, this meditative, quieting that we're learning. You're like, hello.
Yeah,
My
it's
people have
not
been doing
new.
this.
I mean, it
It's
would,
not new.
no, indigenous people were doing a lot of just like, even with the, like the learning how to, even sweat and go into prayer. And then after they would sweat, they would actually go jump into some water to, to calm their nervous system. So it was a great way just to regulate their emotions. So,
So you have all this understanding and knowledge that you kind of put on the back burner for a while
yeah.
as a psychotherapist, and we're trying to kind of practice from a more Western
Mhm.
worldview perspective or something like this,
Yeah.
if that's the right way to say it. And then at some point you had some understanding of, hey, I've got really something to add to this that I think
Mhm.
is very productive. So let's kind of go to the second question and kind of pull in the life model. How did you first, and I know the answer to this, but I'm asking you for the sake of everybody listening, how did you first encounter the life model and what drew you to it?
Yeah. So I remember that day. We were, Monica and I, and we were sitting with some other colleagues. And I think I was at a place where I wanted to express some of these unique ways that was evolving, and I remember I was feeling very frustrated. I was feeling kind of maybe emotionally overwhelmed at the time because I was trying my best to kind of express or maybe have a conversation, but I really felt, my emotions felt very strong. I don't know if I felt that I was heard, or maybe even there wasn't this connection between that I was having with this other colleague. And Monica kind of just came in and said, you know what, and I can't remember the exact words, but she really was attuning with me. She was tuning in. She was being present. She even regulated my nervous system where I could feel safe. I could feel, very comfortable. It went from feeling overwhelmed to feeling like, okay, yes, that's what I'm saying. Thank you. We're connecting. We're being in relationship. And I was like, so afterwards, I was like, Monica, I'm like, thank you for being there for me. And yeah. And then she started saying, yeah, I was like, I'd love for you to share more of what you're learning. And I think that's when our identity group was formed. And so that's when I was introduced to the life model, basically by Monica just really kind of connecting with me in a very much of a relational way and being very attuned to what was going on inside of me.
Yes, and I remember
Yeah.
that day. I
It's
mean, we've talked
powerful.
about it often, right?
Yeah.
Because it was a moment of like disintegration relationally in a small group we were with, and
Yeah.
I remember the moment like looking across the room and seeing the upset on your face, and like it wasn't anything from my therapy training. It wasn't anything from, my church training. I've grown up in church. It was I was pulling up information from what I was reading in the life model of how do I show up for somebody? How do I do this? How do I show up for not just a client, right? But a friend, a colleague. Um, Instead of making it about me, how do I keep the person more important than the problem? And I remember saying to you afterward, I didn't know what I was going to do or if it was going to work, but I pulled up this information and then I showed up with it, and it worked. I was like, oh my goodness, this stuff works. It works.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yes. And then that's kind of history at this point, because we were just on the phone 2 days ago. Like, you and I connect often in our identity
Mhm.
group, and we're finding it as a main source for us of emotional, spiritual, relational growth, spiritual
Mhm.
growth that we're kind of doing with one another. And so it's a really big deal, that,
Yeah.
our history there. And so I'm thankful to be,
Mhm.
having this conversation with you today, because we
Yeah.
are so bonded anyway.
Yeah.
So here's it. Here's another question based on life model, and then we want to get into the medicine wheel method and ask some more questions there. So, Kimberly, did you see the connections between the life model concepts and the indigenous wisdom and practices? Because I know it took several years after we kind of started the identity group that you really started to get in touch. And it was even around the COVID time that you really
Mhm.
started to say, hey, listen, this is a part of my heritage and I want to bring this to the surface
Mhm.
here.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's very similar. The indigenous way is really about healing together. It's very, it's like being part of a community. And that's what the indigenous ways of life is, that we come together, as a tribe, as a clan and community, and be present for one another. Like it is important to regulate your nervous system so you can go to that attunement and be present and be relational. And that's where you feel safe. And there's no hierarchy, it's all one. And so when we're in our identity groups, we do come with a presence. We come with our mind, body, spirit, and our emotions, and we attune together as a circle and a unity. So that's very much what indigenous people, that's what we did. And that's what we do today. Even if you go to a powwow, it's all circular. It's working in rhythm and in balance. So that's why I see that the life model is very similar to a lot of the indigenous ways of healing.
It's a really good point that you're making. And it's something that I say is that the neuroscience, right? Is life models only pulling up the neuroscience that's already there, right? It's only pulling up the biblical theology that we know to be true. So it's like pulling these two things together, and we're understanding that as humans, we really are not, our identity is not individual. Our identity is tribal. Our identity is community. Our identity is belonging. That our brain cares more about who we are than who I am, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we are always thinking from this lens, but here in, our society, I guess, this modern society, especially here in America, I suppose,
Mm-hmm.
we are very individualistic. We have our own social media platform, and where it's just our face and it's just our thoughts and just our opinions rather than communal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that we really are a communal as an entity. Our brains want to have that group belonging. And so that's what I hear you saying, is that indigenous culture is all about that. It's all about being a part of something bigger than yourself, and that the
Mm-hmm.
whole is more important than the individual parts.
Yes, yes, because what happens to one sister happens to all sisters. So
Mm.
it is very much, it's like, it's just not about me. We're all connected. Everything that we do, we are still, everything is connected. So it's not separatism.
Yes, there you go, right? And so let's now go a little bit more into the medicine wheel method. Tell us a little bit about the method. Like, how did you come up with it? What is it? How long have you been using it? This kind of thing.
So, yes, it was years ago. I came across the medicine wheel, because the medicine wheel framework has been
Hmm.
around for thousands of years. So it's nothing new,
Yeah.
and it many different tribes use it differently. Like the Plains Indians might use it different from my particular tribe, and so. But the medicine wheel method, or excuse me, the medicine wheel is for directions.
Hmm.
We're talking about the north, the south, the east, and the west. And each one of those directions represents the emotional, the physical, the spiritual, and the mental. And so we're looking at those four quadrants. And so what I've done through my experience as a indigenous woman and a psychotherapist, and learning about a lot of science-based techniques, I've used the medicine wheel, but I've incorporated the three pillars, which is the indigenous wisdom, along with the spirituality, and also some psychology. So I'm using a lot of IFS, which is very similar as the medicine wheel, because you're working in parts, just like the medicine wheel. And then I'm incorporating a lot of just science-based techniques like breath work, even using some EMDR, which is very similar to when we would do powwows and we dance. I've even found a way that is very similar to working with the right and left part of our brain. So it's all combination of looking at the whole person, making sure that they're in balance, and creating a stronger self, that creates a wholeness. So just remembering who you are. So the medicine is, and very similar to the life model, is identity. Who are you? Not the roles or the labels that has been put on you, but the essence of who you are. And so when you're nurturing those parts, the each direction, and keeping them in balance, because all of them are connected and they work together for good, then we come out knowing more of who we are, which the more that we know who we are, the more joy we have in our life.
That's right. That's so good. I remember you explaining to me the medicine wheel, like showing me, the diagram, and we're getting so excited, like, this intersects. Definitely. We see IFS, we see MDR, we see
Mhm.
life model. And that's what you're bringing up right now. This idea that true identity. Who am I designed to be on the earth, right? As a
Yes.
created being.
Mhm.
God created me to be a unique expression of his love on the earth. And so what does it mean for me to step into that, to walk in it, to understand it myself, and to let that aroma and that beauty be a part of my expression, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that in that is joy, right? And so that's that life model concept of relational joy. And it's good to be together. It's good to be together with God, living out his destiny for us in attachment relationship with the great creator. And it's good to be with one another in our communities and finding our path to really experiencing the goodness of that.
Yes. Yes. So
Mhm.
much. So
So
much.
much, so much. So, let me go to this next question then. Why would a psychotherapist who's never heard of the medicine wheel, maybe doesn't know a ton about indigenous culture, why would they want to use the medicine wheel method? Why would they want to learn more about this framework?
Mhm. Well, if you want to learn like indigenous ways, like I said, it is all about returning back to who you are
Hmm.
and using some of those techniques. So, for instance, the earth, using the different seasons and knowing how do I show up in different seasons? How do I connect with the different seasons that the earth is providing? So we even look at even different moon cycles and different seasons. What should we be doing in the month of fall? In November, we even talk about that, like with the different moon cycles. Like for instance, just start with November. That is a time of gathering up all the things that you have learned, and then releasing those that no longer serve you. And usually in November we have the harvest moon, and so there's different traditions and different rituals that we do. If you like ceremony, it's getting back to a lot of ceremonial things. It's connecting with the earth and using what the great creator has given us, and being able to incorporate, like I said, different ceremonies and rituals to very much connect you to the earth.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
think that's a really different modality, because than a lot of what's out there in the psychology arena, because the earth is breathing, and when we get in rhythm with the earth, we are more balanced. I think if we look at it separate and we don't acknowledge the beauty that God has given us, then we can get out of balance very easily. It's about very much attuning and being in relationship with the earth.
Yeah, we learn so much in our psychotherapy training, right, in grad school about multiculturalism and, cultural significance. And, it's like they weave it in, like
Mhm.
we're supposed to be kind of practicing that so that we can attune to clients who come from different ethnicities, different heritages than us.
Mhm.
And I think that's great and wonderful. I have no problem with it. I think it's been great for me to kind of challenge my own experiences, think outside the box, think how can I approach this person. But your method, the medicine wheel method that you're creating, right? Not the
Mhm.
concept. You're not creating the concept, but the method to apply in psychotherapy um, is not just something you would apply to somebody who is from an indigenous population. This is something we can all embrace, right? This is what
Yeah.
I'm hearing you say. It's something that we can all embrace as a concept because there's something very foundational about it.
Mhm.
It comes back to we are all here on the earth, and the
Right.
indigenous populations were very in touch with the earth as a
Mhm.
healing agent. Not that it's not God, but the earth as a part of what God has given us to ground our own bodies, to find ourselves, to find truth. It's not
Mhm.
this, like out there concept that's not related to God and connection to Jesus. It is God and Jesus. It's this sense of
Mhm.
there is a foundational concept that we can understand, that we can apply to ourselves and use in clinical psychology. So, am
Mhm.
I saying that right? Is there anything you want to add
Yeah,
to that?
yeah, I think so. I think this is one, the medicine wheel method is for all people. It's just
Mhm.
not one. And it's like I said, simple as what can I bring to the table when I'm doing my prayer work?
Mhm.
And that's what it does. We talk about that. We look at the quadrant, the spirituality piece. Like, when we pray, what would you like to bring in? Like, what would you like to have it in your prayer time? This is special. You create what you want to bring to your prayer time. Simple as lighting tobacco, or you could light this particular herb called sweetgrass, which is beautiful. Also cedar. You could light cedar. And why is smell so important? Do you want to play some music while you're doing your prayer and meditation? What is sound to you? How does that actually regulate your nervous system? And also, even what does it do to your brain when you're listening, and touch? What do you want to bring into prayer time? Do you have like a something that you want to just hold tight? It's all about bringing your whole self to prayer. And so that's what indigenous people did. I mean, do you want to dance while you pray? So we'll even talk about how dance and moving your body is a science based also to regulate your body. So we're using all drumming. So we'll drum, and Monica, you were part of the drum that I did, and we did it in a circle, and we're humming, and drumming, and you might want to go into a
Yeah.
prayer language. You have the freedom to do that, and we go into detail the significance of it.
Yes, I remember sitting around the circle with you and our identity group. One of the most powerful
It was so
times
powerful.
spiritually with
Yeah,
God and with one another to
yeah,
worship in this prayer circle, with the drumming that you were doing. Like, oh, that moment was just beautiful. And
it
so,
was.
I mean, I recall it just as you're talking about it. I just can kind of be transported back to that moment. And so, I love how you're speaking about it, like there is something that you bring from your own heritage to the psychotherapy room, but also to the world of psychotherapists, right?
Yes.
We want to be able to hear and embrace and all of these things. Now, I have a couple other questions for you, but I'd love to, for everybody to hear from you at the end. Where can they find more information, your website, your socials? So let's talk a little bit more, and then let's go there.
Okay.
Can you briefly walk us through how you actually use this with a client or in a group? And maybe you just kind of alluded to that a bit, but can you give a little bit more of a concrete example of like what's the practical application of the medicine wheel method?
Yeah. So if you notice, well, the medicine, it's a wheel. And so if the wheel isn't able to move in a way that there's some momentum, right? It's not going to move because it's out of balance. So we look at the four quadrants to see spiritually what kind of attention are you giving yourself spiritually? How is that growing and developing? And sometimes they'll say, well, I don't know, I don't have a faith. I really don't even, I don't. I don't even take notice of that. I'm like, okay, so maybe we should kind of dive into that. And, let's look at how we can create some kind of spiritual pathway into your life, and you get to choose that. Mine is actually, I love Jesus, and and I incorporate him a lot in my spirituality, and or just like I said, the prayer. I have time with prayer and devotion and writing and things, just creating that spiritual part. Emotionally, how are you emotionally? Are you allowing yourself to process emotions? how is your emotional life? It's not, it's kind of off balance. I'm not really doing that well. Okay, well, let's tune that up a little bit. Mentally, what is your mindset? What are you telling yourself? And then the physical part is, yeah, I mean, how do you attune to your body? Where do you feel things in your body? Let's get back into your body. We even look at some of the things that you can do on a daily basis, whether it's breath work, walking, just moving your body, dancing, anything to do with you, within the body. And so we try to get those quadrants, and using, like I said, the psychology, inner child work, the IFS, talking about life model, all these different therapy, these modalities, and making them balance. So, and then the center is where the medicine lies. That's where we get our strength. Is okay, when everything is in balance, and the wheel, excuse me, is able to move pretty quickly because the quadrants are in balance of one another.
Ooh.
We're not here to fix.
Good.
We're here to take notice of the four quadrants. We're here to say, okay, we could do better. We're not here to fix, we're not to make it perfect, but maybe we need to do better in some of these quadrants so you can move through life in a more graceful way, and a way that you really truly want to show up. So it's coming together and making yourself more whole.
So it's like this biopsychosocial spiritual framework of like, how do we help the individual? We need to do this for ourselves too as psychotherapists, but how do we help the individual that we're working with find balance in all of these ways? And so you have a whole curriculum that you've written, and you are really seeing some people go through some transformative processes.
Yes.
I know that, we can't always talk about, clients' experiences, but is there anything you can tell us about some of what you're seeing in terms of the transformation individuals are going through?
Yeah, I have one client who came in, and I just said, just tell me about you. Don't tell me about the roles. Don't tell me the labels that you've put on yourself. I want to know who you are. And one of my clients says, I don't know. Like, I know I'm a wife and a mother and a daughter, and I have this amazing career. And I'm like, okay, let's talk more about who are you? What does your heart say? What is it that brings you joy? And let's pull from those, and let's pull from the quadrants to get to know more of who you are and accept those parts. That's what the internal family systems is like. There's no bad parts. You just haven't taken time to visit those parts. And so the more that we visit those parts, the more you get to know who you are. And so the more that we can have the freedom to be who you are, to be in relationship with all those parts and be more attuned to those parts, then you can show up. And that's really what I think the beautiful thing about it is, and I can also say that even, myself, is like, the more that I've accepted those parts and who I am, I can show up. And I first have to belong within myself. I have to have a belonging within me. And so when I enter into a circle, then I automatically feel like I belong, because I first belong to myself. And I think, and that's what is beautiful about the identity group, has allowed that space to accept people just the way they are and love them and feel safe that they can show up more as themselves. And so I think that's really what the medicine wheel method is, that we are all one. And and the more that we know those different parts, and they're in balance and in unity, then we have a better rhythm in life.
Kimberly, as you're saying all of this, I do feel inspired, but I'm also kind of like going back to different moments in time in our journey together as friends and as individuals. I mean, we are much different than we were 10 years ago. We have grown so much. And I recall, the COVID season, like when all that was happening, and we were all being kind of crushed in terms of our own worldviews, our perspectives, like what our experiences were. And you really came to life in a different way during that time. And hey, it was not easy for us. I mean, it's not like we've just had a kumbaya identity group all these 10 years. Like, we've gone through really hard things, really hard conversations, and we've used the life model framework to find our way through it all relationally. And I think I'm just inspired as you're talking right now, because you're speaking about your birthing in terms of you birthing into your own identity, right? Because you had been enculturated, if that's even a word,
Yeah.
into other cultures
Right.
rather than living out of this space of who God's created you to be as an ambassador almost, right? Of your own heritage, and bringing that unique complexity to every group that you're in, and now to the world, right?
Yeah.
To the world of psychotherapists and everyone who we will influence. And so as we finalize our conversation here, I'd love for you to share with our audience where they can find out more. Tell us your website, tell us your socials, where are you, and how can people find you?
So the medicinewheelmethod.com is my website. And I am, Kimberly Owen. That is my Instagram and Facebook. Kimberly Owen Coaching actually is on Facebook. And I'm excited because I'm offering a 6-week course, just going over the different, the directions, the pillars. And if anybody's inquisitive about it, it's kind of like an intro, and it's been beautiful because a lot of women are able to really find their uniqueness through this. So that's really what it's for, is to find your unique giftings and be able to use it. And I'm working on a certification now for therapists who can get CEUs with the medicine wheel method. I'm really excited about that as well. So, which would be good, great for people in leadership, coaches, therapists, and things like that.
That's awesome. So 6-week course, that's for anyone, not just psychotherapists. Anyone can attend this. They don't have to be in North Carolina. They can be anywhere in the world. And so that's coming up. So check out Kimberly's website, and then also be on the lookout. Just keep following Kimberly, because she's working toward creating a continuing education curriculum based on the medicine wheel. So we'll be looking forward to that. Kimberly, thank you so much for joining me here today.
You're welcome.
It's a blessing to be together. And the reason is because you and I both know that healing spreads when therapists live in joy. And that's what we're wanting. We're wanting to get our fellow therapists on board with this so we really can be transformative to our world. So blessings, friend.